She forced an old woman to stand on the bus, then this happened. The bus jerked forward while the old woman was still standing in the aisle, her hand tight around a worn wooden walking stick, her balance shaky as the driver hit the gas. People noticed. This was not one of those quiet situations people forget 5 minutes later, it was obvious. The girl had rushed onto the bus just seconds earlier, breath uneven, coat half-buttoned, hair still styled from hours of prep. She had slid into the seat fast, relief written all over her posture. This bus was the final step before the biggest day of her life so far. She was heading to a fashion show she had worked toward for months. Not just attending. Competing. One shot to be seen by the right people. She sat back, adjusting the pink coat that brushed the top of her thighs. It was flashy and impossible to miss. The kind of coat that said she wanted to be noticed. Her foot bounced lightly as she checked her phone again, scrolling through reminders, timing, location details. Her mind was already ahead of her body, already picturing the runway, the lights, the judges' faces. Then the bus filled up fast. At the next stop, a few more people climbed on. Office workers, shoppers, students. And then the old woman stepped in last, slow and careful, one step at a time. Her hair was thin and white, pulled back neatly. She wore a simple blue dress under a white coat that looked older than the girl herself. The walking stick wasn't for show. Every movement depended on it. She stood near the front at first, waiting, scanning the seats. No one moved. The bus driver pulled away before she could say much of anything. She shifted her weight, the stick tapping lightly against the floor as the bus swayed. She started moving down the aisle. It took effort. Each step was measured. Her shoulders were tense, her grip tight. She stopped near the girl in the pink coat and leaned slightly forward, clearly asking for the seat in the way older people do when they are tired but still trying to hold on to dignity. The girl looked up for a second. Not long enough to really take the woman in. Just long enough to register inconvenience. She looked away again. Her thumb went back to her phone. Her shoulders stayed relaxed. Her legs stayed crossed. She acted like she hadn't understood what was being asked of her, even though everyone around did. A few people noticed and exchanged looks. One man near the middle shook his head slightly. A woman near the window stared hard for a moment, then looked away, uncomfortable. The old woman stayed standing. She did not argue. She did not raise her voice. She simply stayed there, holding the stick, trying to stay upright as the bus rolled on. Another passenger finally stood up 2 rows ahead and offered their seat. The old woman nodded, grateful, and made her way forward. It took time. The bus rocked again, and she had to pause, steady herself, and continue. When she finally sat down, the tension in the air didn't disappear. It just shifted. The girl in the pink coat felt it even if she didn't want to admit it. The silence felt heavier than before. She adjusted her coat again, uncrossed and recrossed her legs, then stared out the window instead of at her phone. She told herself she had done nothing wrong. She told herself she was tired too. That she had gotten there first. That no one had specifically called her out. That someone else had stood up anyway. All reasonable thoughts. All very convenient. The bus ride continued, but her focus drifted. The images of the runway in her head faded, replaced by flashes of the old woman gripping that stick, the slight bend in her back, the way her eyes had lingered on the seat just a bit too long before moving on. She shook it off. This day mattered. She could not afford distractions. She checked the time again. Still okay. Still early enough. When the bus reached her stop, she stood quickly, smoothing her coat, stepping into the aisle without looking back. She got off and walked toward the venue, heels clicking with purpose, confidence returning with every step away from the bus. By the time she reached the building, the moment already felt smaller. Less important. Something that happened on a crowded bus and ended there. Or so she thought. The fashion show venue buzzed with energy. Models checked in, designers adjusted racks, assistants rushed around with clipboards and headsets. The air smelled like perfume, hairspray, and nerves. The girl signed in and took her place with the others. She was not the only one wearing bold colors, but her pink coat still stood out. A few people glanced her way. That felt good. Familiar. Comforting. She spent the next hour preparing, changing, waiting. The bus incident faded further into the background as the real pressure set in. This was what she had trained for. Walk straight. Keep pace. Hold posture. No mistakes. When it was finally time, she stepped onto the runway and did exactly that. She moved well. Not perfect but strong. Confident. The coat flowed the way it was meant to. She held herself like she belonged there. She avoided looking directly at the judges, like she had been taught, but she noticed them anyway. A panel of serious faces, all watching closely. One older woman stood out among them. Observant. Wearing a familiar blue dress under a white coat. The recognition did not hit immediately. It lingered at the edge of her awareness, uncomfortable but unclear. She finished her walk, exited, and returned backstage, heart still racing from adrenaline. She tried to remember where she had seen that woman before. The show went on. More walks. More waiting. More tension. By the time it ended, everyone felt drained. They gathered as the results were prepared. Quiet conversations filled the room. Some people looked hopeful. Others already looked defeated. The girl stood near the back, arms folded lightly, replaying her performance in her head. She told herself she had done well. Well enough. When the winners were announced, her name came up. For a second, she didn't react. It took an extra beat for the words to land. Then everything rushed in at once. Relief. Excitement. She walked forward, accepted congratulations, smiled for photos. The judges stood and applauded politely. And then she saw her clearly. The old woman from the bus. Same face. Same posture. Same calm presence. Now seated at the judging table, hands folded, watching her with a gentle expression. The realization hit hard and fast. The bus. The seat. The walking stick. The moment she had looked away. The girl's smile tightened, just slightly. She did not know what to think. Or what to feel. She wondered if the woman recognized her too. If she remembered. If it mattered. The old woman's expression gave nothing away. After the event, people mingled. The girl stayed close to her group, avoiding eye contact with the judges. She wanted to leave on a high note, not tangled in thoughts she didn't know how to handle. But the image stayed with her long after she went home. That night, lying in bed, the win felt different than she had imagined. Still good. Still exciting. But heavier. Complicated. She replayed the bus scene again and again, wishing she had stood up. Wishing she had handled it differently. Wishing she could undo a moment that now felt much bigger than she had thought. Days passed. Life moved on. The win opened doors. Small opportunities followed. The story of the bus faded into memory, but it never fully disappeared. Years later, it came back in a way she never expected. And this time, she would not look away. Years passed quietly, the way time usually does when life keeps moving and no one stops to mark the small changes. The girl from the bus was no longer just a girl chasing one moment. She built a career from that early win. Modeling turned into brand work. Brand work turned into contracts. The pink furry coat became a story she told occasionally, a reminder of how young she had been, how much she thought confidence meant being noticed. She learned fast that real confidence didn't look loud. It didn't demand attention. It held space without pushing others out of it. Still, the memory of the bus stayed tucked somewhere uncomfortable. It came back at random times. On crowded trains. In waiting rooms. In moments when someone older stood nearby longer than expected. She would feel a nudge inside, a quiet reminder that didn't accuse but didn't let her forget either. She never saw the old woman again. Not at shows. Not at events. Not in interviews. The judge faded into the background of her story, known but unreachable. Until one afternoon at a mall. It wasn't a special day. No event. No cameras. Just errands squeezed between meetings. She wore jeans, flat shoes, a simple sweater. Nothing that drew attention. She blended in, which was something she had grown to appreciate. The mall was busy in the slow, steady way that made lines longer than they should be. She joined a queue at a small customer service counter, checking her phone out of habit. The line barely moved. People sighed. Someone shuffled forward a few inches, then stopped again. That was when she noticed the woman behind her. It took a moment. Familiarity doesn't always arrive clearly. Sometimes it comes as a feeling first, a sense of recognition without a clear source. The white coat was there again. The blue dress. The walking stick, slightly more worn now. The same careful posture, the same calm presence. The girl turned fully this time. The old woman stood quietly, hands resting on the stick, eyes forward. She looked tired. Not dramatically so. Just the way people do when standing takes more effort than it once did. Without thinking too much about it, the girl stepped out of line and gestured toward her place. She moved with intention, not hesitation. She made space. She made it clear. The old woman looked at her, surprised at first. Then her expression softened. She nodded and took the spot. The girl didn't feel proud. She didn't feel like she was correcting the past. It felt simpler than that. It felt necessary. She stood behind her, weight shifting from one foot to the other, watching the line move slowly forward. She noticed how often the woman adjusted her grip on the stick. How her shoulders rose slightly when people brushed past too close. When the counter finally came into reach, the girl noticed the woman pausing, taking a breath before stepping forward. The kind of pause that comes when the body needs a second even if the mind wants to keep going. Without making a show of it, the girl stepped forward again and gestured to a nearby bench. She encouraged the woman to sit while she held the place. The woman hesitated, then sat. Her shoulders relaxed almost immediately. Relief settled in. The girl stayed standing, arms loosely crossed, watching the line, keeping her place secure. No one complained. A few people noticed. No one objected. When it was finally the woman's turn, she stood again, slower this time. She turned and looked at the girl more closely. Recognition passed between them, subtle but unmistakable. The girl saw it in the woman's eyes first. Memory. Understanding. The woman studied her face, searching, then finding what she was looking for. The girl didn't look away this time. She held the gaze. She let herself be seen fully. The woman smiled, not widely, not dramatically. Just enough. She handled her business at the counter, then turned back toward the girl. She reached out and rested a hand briefly on her arm. It was light, steady. That touch said more than words could have. The girl nodded. She smiled back. Something inside her settled. They parted without exchanging names, without explaining anything to the people around them. They didn't need to. The moment belonged to them alone. As the girl walked away, she felt lighter than she had in years. Not because she had done something big, but because she had done something right when it mattered. She realized then that kindness isn't about fixing the past. It's about paying attention in the present. From that day on, she made it a habit. On buses. In lines. In waiting rooms. She noticed who needed space and who needed support. She didn't announce it. She didn't expect recognition. She just acted. Sometimes people thanked her. Sometimes they didn't. That didn't matter anymore. The old woman remained a quiet anchor in her story. A reminder that moments don't end when they pass. They carry forward, shaping choices in ways we don't always see right away. Years later, during an interview about her career, she was asked what moment changed her most. She didn't mention the runway. She didn't mention awards. She talked about a bus ride. About how easy it is to miss someone when you're focused on yourself. And how powerful it can be to notice them later and choose differently. The story resonated. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was ordinary. People recognized themselves in it. The girl knew she could never erase that first moment. But she also knew it no longer defined her. What mattered was what came after. Life didn't slow down after that day at the mall. If anything, it sped up. Work piled on. Travel became normal. Airports replaced buses, and waiting rooms replaced sidewalks. From the outside, her life looked polished and controlled. Inside, it felt fuller in a quieter way. What changed wasn't her schedule. It was how she moved through ordinary moments. She noticed things she used to miss. Who stood too long without speaking. Who pretended they weren't struggling. Who smiled out of habit, not comfort. These were not dramatic observations. They didn't feel heroic. They felt human. She stopped rushing past people just to stay on time. She learned that being late by 2 minutes was sometimes worth it. None of this turned her into a saint. She still had bad days. She still got irritated in lines. She still caught herself making quick judgments. The difference was that she corrected herself faster. She didn't double down anymore. The old woman from the bus and the mall never left her thoughts completely. The image shifted over time. At first, it came with regret. Then awareness. Later, gratitude. That woman had every reason to hold on to that first moment. She could have let it harden her. She could have remembered the girl as selfish and moved on. Instead, she chose something else. Not forgiveness in a dramatic sense. Not a lesson delivered loudly. Just quiet kindness. And that choice had shaped years of someone else's life. The girl understood that only much later. One winter, years after the mall encounter, she found herself back on a city bus. Not by necessity, but by choice. Traffic had been bad. Parking was impossible. The bus was easier. She stood near the middle, holding onto a pole, coat zipped up, hair pulled back. Nobody recognized her. She liked it that way. At one stop, an older man boarded slowly. No walking stick, but unsteady all the same. He scanned the seats. None opened up. Before anyone had to look away, she stepped aside and guided him to her spot. He nodded, grateful but not emotional. He sat. The bus moved on. It felt normal. That's when she realized something important. She was no longer reacting to one old memory. She had built a habit. And habits don't come from guilt. They come from learning. She didn't think about the pink coat much anymore. It existed now as a marker of who she used to be, not someone she judged harshly, but someone she understood better. That younger version of herself wasn't cruel. She was narrow, focused, afraid of missing her chance. The truth was she hadn't believed there would be more chances. Now she knew better. Years later, she attended another fashion event, this time not as a contestant, but as a guest. She sat in the audience, watching younger women step onto the runway with the same tension she once carried. Some of them wore bold outfits. Some played it safe. All of them wanted to be seen. Her eyes drifted to the judges' table. Different faces this time. Younger, louder, faster. She wondered if any of them understood the weight of small choices yet. Or if that only came with time. After the show, she stepped outside into the evening air. The street buzzed with people heading home. Cars honked. A bus pulled up nearby, doors opening with a familiar sound. She smiled at that. Not because of nostalgia, but because of perspective. That bus ride long ago didn't ruin her. It didn't define her future in a negative way. It cracked something open. It made room for growth. And the woman she became because of it was someone she respected. Months later, during a charity event focused on elder care, she volunteered without fanfare. No press. No speeches. She helped organize seating, guided people through crowded halls, made sure no one was left standing too long. At one point, she noticed an elderly woman sitting alone, hands folded in her lap, watching the room. The girl walked over and asked if she needed anything. The woman shook her head, smiled, and said she was fine. The girl stayed anyway, just for a minute. They sat together quietly, sharing the space. The girl didn't need recognition for that. She didn't need the moment to mean anything beyond itself. She had learned that kindness doesn't need witnesses. Later that night, as she drove home, she thought about how easily everything could have gone differently. How that judge on the bus could have chosen bitterness. How that mall line could have passed without recognition. How she herself could have kept repeating the same mistake if no one had interrupted her path. Life didn't interrupt her loudly. It nudged her. And she listened. The story, when told online years later by someone who witnessed the bus incident, spread quickly. People argued about it, took sides, added their own opinions. Some criticized the girl harshly. Others focused on the judge's choice. The girl didn't comment. She didn't defend herself. She didn't correct the details. She knew the truth already. She knew that one moment of unkindness didn't cancel a lifetime of learning. And one moment of kindness didn't need applause to matter. The woman from the bus had shown her that. In the end, the most important part of the story wasn't the win, the fashion show, or even the coincidence. It was the fact that people are allowed to grow. And sometimes, The person who gives you that chance doesn't say a word. Subscribe for more stories.